I dug out one of my favourite cookbooks and have invited my dad over for an 80s inspired 3-course meal.
I've been looking forward to this quite some time.
Let's see how it goes and whether he likes my versions of his all-time favourites. I have set for my menu, of course, it could not be an 80s 3-course meal without vol au vents as the starter. I'm doing chicken as my main, so these are just going to be mushroom vol au vent, not chicken and mushroom. Next up, again, I feel like hallmark dinner meal of the 80s was chicken Kiev, but I'm going to reimagine mine slightly, so we'll see what my dad makes of that. And I can't possibly do an 80s meal without finishing up with a black forest gatto for pudding. So let's get started. I've got a bit of a busy day today, so I'm going to prep ahead some of this meal before I have to go to a kid's birthday party. As if you have primary school children, you will know every weekend there seems to be birthday parties. So I'm going to do the party, come back and reassemble the rest of the meal. So the two things that I'm going to make first are the sponges for the black forest gatto and the garlic butter that will go into my reimagined chicken Kiev. So I'm following quite a simple recipe for the cake, and usually with cakes I tend to follow my granny's recipe where you weigh out the eggs and you do everything else to the weight of the eggs. But with this being a chocolate cake and me using a bit of extra cacao powder, I am following a natural recipe for this as opposed to doing my granny's method. The first thing I'm going to do is cream together the butter and the sugar. Now, I was going to use my KitchenAid for the mixing process, but I do think I rely quite heavily on appliances in my videos. So I thought I'd do this one the old-fashioned way and try and do most of it by hand. Next up, I'm going to crack in my eggs. And you know what? This is one of my favourite features of our new kitchen. It sounds quite boring. That our bin is right next to the worktop. So when I'm doing something like this, I can just drop the eggshells straight into the bin with no mess. Now I'm going to be adding, hello? Oh, you made something? You can tell I'm filming at the weekend because I've just been bought this cute little chick by my little girl. He's written mummy on the back. But back to business. So I'm using cacao powder in my cake as I quite like using cacao. I made the switch over from cocoa powder to cacao as it's less processed and I prefer the taste of it. It's really handy to have in the kitchen to use in so many different things. We like it in overnight oats, making homemade ice cream, or even just making homemade hot chocolates. So I'm going to add that in as well. Every time I film these videos, I say to myself, I need to find my aprons that got packed away when we packed up our kitchen, and I am yet to find them as I'm quite a messy cook and I just end up with food all down me. So trying to stay away from this flour before the party that we've got to pop out to. Now, as you'll see, this is quite a thick mix. So I'm loosening mine up with a bit of milk. And I'm also going to be adding in some vanilla extract as well. When you use cacao powder, it does take on quite a bit of the moisture of what you're making. So often you do have to add a little bit of extra liquid. This is all mixed up now, and I'm going to spoon into some lined tins. I think most of the time I am baking, I am usually very time poor, racing in between things. And I think I drive my mum a bit mad that I normally would just cut a piece of greaseproof paper and ram it into the tins and not go to the lengths of what I'm doing now, tracing out the circle and cutting it out properly. But I feel like with a gatto, there's less room to hide. So I am going to do it properly this time. my gosh. This is why I don't do it. The pen didn't even show up. Let's try that again. There we go. My little ones are outside doing some crafty things whilst I get this cake made, and they love using scissors, so I probably should have enlisted their help for this bit. They're much neater than I am. I've seen that you can get cake tin liners in shops, and I often walk past and think, oh, who needs that when you can just use a bit of greaseproof paper? But in this moment, I can see why you might buy those. So I'm spreading the mix across 3 tins because I would like this cake to have 3 layers, and I don't trust myself to try and slice one of these layers in half as my recipe suggested that I'm following. I said this on my last video of retro cooking, that it's funny how certain recipes can carry certain memories. And when I think about like chocolate cake that we had when we were younger, I feel like for us it was a Sara Lee Gatto. That was the thing. And my gran would always make an amazing chocolate fudge cake. It wasn't Black Forest, but it was so delicious. So these cakes will now go on to bake, and I will get going on making the garlic butter for my chicken Kiev. So I'm now going to prepare the filling for my chicken Kiev, which I am reimagining slightly. Now, I really love this trick for making homemade garlic bread. It's so simple, and it's something that you can just keep in the freezer to make life a bit easier for yourself. So essentially, I've just softened some butter, and I've got some garlic that I have defrosted. And this is this frozen garlic that I absolutely love getting. It's so much better value than buying garlic cloves, and it's way less faff than having to peel and chop garlic. And then I'm going to add to it some parsley. Now, in the past, I would use fresh parsley that I had washed and chopped, but I just found that I was wasting so much of that I swapped over to dried parsley. And for me, I feel like it does kind of the same job. So this is much better for us. We waste a lot less. Now, I said I was going to do a slightly different spin on a chicken Kiev. And one of our favorite things to do with my dad is we love to go out for a burger. So I thought, how about we make chicken Kiev style burgers? So I've got some brioche buns, and we're going to assemble it all up and see what he thinks of it reimagined in that format. And I think it's going to go down pretty well. So I'm just going to stir the butter and the garlic together. What I love as well about these frozen garlic cubes is they're kind of like a garlic puree when they defrost. So if you're making something like this, they just kind of blend in. Whereas if I had chopped or minced garlic at home, they would still be kind of like garlic chunks. So actually it's perfect for making simple garlic butter. And again, I feel like when I've done this with fresh parsley, it's kind of gone a bit slimy and kind of clumped together. Maybe I was just doing it wrong. But I quite like with the dried parsley that it incorporates quite nicely into the butter. Put a little bit more. I also love using this on top of pasta bakes. I mix it into breadcrumbs. I just think it gives it a nice colour and a little bit of extra taste without being too overpowering. And now all I need to do is get some cling film, and I'll spoon the butter mixture into the middle. Then I'm just going to shape it into a bit of a log shape using the cling film. And then my plan is I'm going to pop this in the freezer, and then I'm going to slice it into some little discs to put in my chicken. And hopefully I will have some leftovers from doing this, so that then I can keep that for making homemade garlic bread. Great, so that will live in the freezer now to firm up, and then I can slice it into little discs to pop in my chicken. Whilst the cakes are baking, I have to show a little sneak peek into this book because I just love it. I had this cookbook for such a long time. I really love the lentil soup recipe in here. And I've taken some inspiration from the recipes that were popular back then. I think this book was made, when was it made? This book was first published in 1976, which I love. And I love the pictures in it. It's so nostalgic. Yeah, it's just so, it's so funny to see back the different recipes and how food was presented, and I feel like every page is kind of all the same colour. But what is that? Tomato and herb ring, some kind of like tomato. It's a bit like a tomato jelly. Yeah, it's got gelatin in it. But there are some amazing recipes in this book and some really great dinner recipes too. I feel like we've made a lot of things from this page. This flapjack recipe is so tasty. And what I love is, like, you look now at these recipes and there's hardly any ingredients really in them. I feel like now when you look at recipes, we add so many extra things in, but they're pretty simple, the recipes that are in this book. So we're back from the kids' party and I'm going to start making the filling for the Black Forest Gâteau and assembling the cake. So I'm trying out 2 different fillings options as I wasn't sure which would be the best to do this with. So I've got these tinned cherries, which are like, I think it's meant for filling pies with. So I'm going to try and strain the cherries off a bit from this syrupy stuff that they're in so that I can keep the cherries separate. And then I've also got some frozen cherries, but I've just bitten into one and they're actually really sour. So I'm going to see if I can put a bit of sugar on them to try and take away some of that sourness, because I don't think that's going to be very nice on the cake. And we'll see how it goes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these cherries, which don't look that nice, and then this syrup liquid as the filling elements of the cake. And then I'm going to try and pop a bit of sugar on these cherries so that I can use them to decorate the top of the cake and hopefully not be too sour. Now there are quite a lot of cherries in this bowl because I'm going to try and make some jam with the remaining cherries that are left, and maybe make some like compote or something like that for the kids' porridge and breakfasts. So the next thing I'm going to do is whip up some cream to go in between the layers of the cake. And I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to do this in my Thermomix. You could use a stand mixer or a handheld electric whisk, but I'm going to go with the Thermomix today to do this job. So I've popped my first layer of cream on, and then I'm just going to do like a little drizzle of my cherry liquid. I'm sure there's lots of different ways you could make a Black Forest Gâteau, but this is my interpretation of it. And I think I'm just going to dot some of these cherries around. My next layer on. I think the kids are going to be so excited when they see this cake. Squish some of that juice to the edge. Now look, it's very much a homemade cake. It's a little bit lopsided, but that's fine. Yeah, it looks quite rustic, but that's part of its charm. I'm going to do the final topping a little bit later so that it'll look really nice. I'm going to finish it off with some cherries, a little bit more cream, and some dark chocolate shavings as well. I'm now going to prepare the chicken Kiev. So I've got some baguette here that we just didn't get round to finishing. And I quite like keeping bread like this because it makes really good breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to pop some of this into my Thermomix, or you could use a food processor. And then I'm going to blitz this up into some breadcrumbs, which I'm going to use as the outer coating of my chicken Kiev. I've also got the garlic butter out of the freezer just to let it soften up a little bit before I pop it into the chicken. And I mentioned before about dried parsley. I quite like putting a little bit of this in to my breadcrumbs when I whiz them up, because I just think it adds a little bit of extra colour and a nice taste. So I'm going to blitz this up now. So that's now blitzed up. I'm just going to pop into the bowl, ready for coating the chicken. I'm also going to crack an egg. And just whisk that up a little bit. So I've got my station lined up. Now I just need to cut some discs of this frozen garlic butter. Then I'm going to pop a little piece of this garlic butter inside the middle of each of the chicken breasts. So I've chopped up some pieces of the garlic butter and I made a bit extra, so I've got some to go back into the freezer. And then I'm just going to insert into the chicken breast. Just make sure there's a big enough gap. Pop it in. Right, so I've filled the chicken breasts with some of the garlic butter. Just going to make sure it's pushed in as much as it can go. Then I'm going to coat each chicken breast in some flour. So I've done the flour. Now I'm going to coat each one in some of the egg. Then I will coat in breadcrumbs. And I'm going to be quite generous with the breadcrumbs, just so it's nice and crispy. And then I'll repeat for the rest of them. So these are now fully coated in the breadcrumbs, and I'm going to pop this to one side until I'm ready to cook them, and I'll be cooking them in the air fryer. Now I'm going to chop some mushrooms, which will be used in my vol au vent starter. When I told my dad that we were going to be having vol au vents, he was reminiscing about prawn vol au vents, chicken and mushroom vol au vents, but today we're just going with mushroom. And I am going to the extra effort of making the vol au vent cases myself, which I haven't done for a very, very, very long time. So we'll see if I can remember how to do it. I think the last time I made a vol au vent case using pastry, as opposed to buying pre-made, I want to say it was about 20 years ago. Yeah, about 20 years ago, which makes me feel very, very old. I recently did an 80s inspired batch cook, and I was amazed by how many mushrooms I had to buy and cut up as part of the meals. And I was a bit worried that our kids would not have entertained the sheer volume of mushrooms that we ate. But actually, they love mushrooms. They're not big meat eaters. And they loved all of the mushroom meals, especially the mushroom stroganoff, which was a real surprise. To go from not liking mushrooms to liking a meal that is heavily based around them was a real win. So hopefully they will like these too. These will now be put to one side whilst I prepare the cases. So now I'm going to make the vol au vent cases. So I've got some puff pastry. Now, let's remember how to do this. So I need to make 2 of these for each of the vol au vent. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm still trying to build my YouTube and my Instagram. And I'm so grateful for everyone who has subscribed and followed me on those channels. Today, very excitingly, Joe Wicks started following me on Instagram. I can't believe it. So that has slightly derailed my vol au vent cooking whilst I get over the excitement of that. Very, very exciting times. But now back to trying to dig out this memory of how I make these vol au vents. So essentially you have to put a hole in each of these to make the ring. The idea is that the ring puffs up. That becomes the case for your filling to go in. And I remember she used to cook these on the trays. They'd be like little hats for the vol au vent. So I think I'm going to do that on a separate tray and see how it works. I've whisked up another egg and I'm going to just brush the bases of these and then stick the rings on the top. And the idea is that these will puff up in the oven and form the cases. I'm interested to see how this turns out. I can't say I have a lot of confidence in these rings. And I feel like maybe I should have got my mum round to help me, give me a bit of a refresher in vol au vent making, but I'm trusting the process. I'm sure it'll work. Then my last step is just to prick the bases of these vol au vent so that the base hopefully doesn't inflate too much. They're starting to grow in height, which bodes well. It's looking good. They were looking pretty flat before, but I don't want to speak too soon on it. They are looking like vol au vent cases. Dad will be here soon, so I just need to finish doing the vol au vent filling. And it's funny, I think like when you have a YouTube channel, I think people think I'm a lot more organized than I am. I switched over to using frozen onions and it's just so much better. I waste a lot less and it's just so much easier for dishes like this. We only need a handful of chopped onions. And I'm going to add in some seasoning and a little bit of cream as well. But I am having to keep an eye on the oven as I really, really don't want those vol au vents to burn. I feel like these pinch points are what always get me when I'm doing these sorts of cooking experiments and videos, just having to keep an eye on one too many things. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on that oven. And once they're out, I'm going to move on to the final stages of the chicken Kiev. Now I have actually just had a thought. If I was to do this again, instead of heating normal butter up in the pan, I think I would use a little bit of that leftover garlic butter that I've got in the freezer, as that would add a really nice flavour to this mushroom. But that is the benefit of hindsight, I guess, this time. So the vol au vent cases are done and they're looking pretty good. So I'm pleased with how they've turned out. I'm just going to let them cool down a little bit and my dad will be here in about 10 minutes. And by that point, the cream should have really infused with the mushrooms and I can pop the filling in these. So I'm now going to pop the chicken into the air fryer. My mum bought us this air fryer to try and convince us to get into air frying things because she loves air frying stuff. So that's going to go in the air fryer now and cook until nice and crunchy and golden. I love the irony of me talking about multitasking earlier. Too much multitasking happened. And I managed to overwhip the last bit of cream that I had these wonderful intentions of piping onto the top of the cake. So we're going to go with some of the cherry juice instead. I've also got some dark chocolate, which I'm going to grate a little bit onto the top. So I'm going to pop some of these cherries on. God, this is making up for the lack of cream. Oh dear. Not ideal. And I'll top with my chocolate. There we go. I feel like topped with enough chocolate. No one will ever know about my cream disaster. So Dad is about to arrive, and my final job is getting the burger buns and everything ready for my chicken Kiev burgers. I'm doing it burger style, just do a bit more of a modern twist on it. So it'll be interesting to see what he makes of that. I am pretty pleased. That looks really good. I think I'm actually going to put them all on a little plate. And everyone can pick which one they would like. Really, I am pleased with how these have turned out. Fantastic.
Do you know what they're called?
Vol-au-vent.
And your granddad, that's his favourite. Yeah, and this is going back 170 million years, when granddad was a boy. And there were dinosaurs in the garden. And vol-au-vents on the table. I've been looking forward to this quite some time. That is really, really good. That's like stepping back 60 years. Yeah, you cracked that, okay?
Now look, the chicken Kiev burger was delicious. But even though I thought I'd put a lot of butter in, I actually would put way more butter in next time to give it that real chicken Kiev feel. Finally, the Black Forest Gâteau. Now, my dad really did like this. My kids thought it was somebody's birthday. But it came out so tasty. However, it didn't have that kirsch flavour that he remembered. So I think for him, he would have liked to have had the kirsch in there. But for us, this was so delicious. The next day, once it soaked up all the cherry juice, it was so perfect. All in all, I think that was a big success. It was great fun to have a go at cooking something different for Dad. And I'm excited to try this again with some more dishes from the past. If you've got any suggestions on what I could try next time, please do let me know in the comments.